Hello my fellows, hope you're doing well these days. We are still in lockdown here in Sydney. We're not entirely sure when lockdown is going to be lifted. All we can do is hope that everyone does the right thing so that case numbers go down and we can go back to some semblance of normalcy. But anyway, plants, that's what you guys are here for. So in today's video, I wanted to share with you some of my top favorite trailing Hoyas at the moment, in case you guys were interested in trailing Hoyas specifically and are looking to add some to your collection. So let me preface this by saying that these Hoyas can also be trellised and made to climb, but personally I prefer the look of these Hoyas sort of cascading and dangling down. Before we get started though, if you're new here, my name is Grace and I post plant videos every week. So if you're interested in content like this, definitely hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell if you haven't already so you get notified every time I upload a video. The first trailing Hoya I wanted to talk about is this Hoya Curtisii Philippines. This is quite the fan favorite because of the cute little pointy leaves. I don't even know what sort of shape you would call this. Is it a spade? It's got a good amount of silver splashing on the foliage as well. Such a beauty in my opinion. So this sits in front of a north-facing window, which is the equivalent of south-facing for you guys in the northern hemisphere, because remember I am in Australia. It's gotten visibly sun-stressed. When I first got this plant, it was green and now it's turned into a really vibrant shade of purple, which I love. It's gotten pretty long since the last time I showed this guy on my channel. It's absolutely loving life. I mean, look at these aerial roots. Do you think that I should propagate this when spring comes around? Because I think it'll look pretty nice if it was fuller and has more strands coming down. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Next, we have this Hoya Croniana, which took me a little while to pull the trigger on because for the longest time I couldn't tell the difference between this one and the Lacunosa. They both have this sort of like ridging on the foliage and they're both a little like semi-succulent, but I think I can sort of tell the difference now. The Hoya Croniana is a little bit more rounded in shape, and I find that one of the telltale signs is actually the sinus of the foliage. It seems to be a lot flatter than the Lacunosa that's kind of pointier. Sadly, I don't have the Lacunosa yet to be able to show you like a direct side-by-side comparison, but if you have both of them, do let us know down below if there are any other sort of differences that you can tell. Anyway, long story short, I'm really glad that I got this plant. It's only got like one trailing stem at the moment, but there is another one that's starting to form up here, so I'm really looking forward to when this plant gets a little bit more bushy. Next up we have the Hoya Chouke, which is a cross between the Hoya carnosa and the Hoya serpens. It might not look like much from afar, but it's actually got quite an interesting texture. The foliage is kind of flat and leathery and I can't stop touching it. This plant is really growing on me. It's super easy care. It's pushed out so many new leaves since I got it, and yeah, overall solid trailing plant. Next up is another fan favorite. I'm gonna make this quick, I promise, because you guys would have seen this in so many of my other videos, and that's the Hoya Hugegiuliana Variegata. As I mentioned previously, I've had this for about 2 years. It's one of my first Hoyas, and it's come a long way. It's now got, I don't know, about 5 growth points by the looks of it, and it's also flowered for me, so I had to include this in this video. Similar to the other 3 Hoyas that I mentioned before this, they are all sitting in front of a north-facing window and they're absolutely loving life. They've been growing profusely. So if you are struggling with growth on your Hoyas, consider moving them to north-facing windows if you're in the southern hemisphere or south-facing windows if you're in the northern hemisphere. Next up we have my Fishtail Hoya, or the Hoya Polyneura. It's called the Fishtail Hoya for obvious reasons. The foliage pattern resembles fishtails. This plant is popular for good reason. I love the veining on this plant, the growth pattern, and kind of just the way that it hangs. It's so unique, there is nothing else really like it. It's also super easy to propagate. I've taken so many cuttings from this plant. I've rooted them in water with like 100% success rate. This particular one did suffer a really bad episode of mealybugs, but I have treated it since then with some diatomaceous earth and also rubbing alcohol, and it seems to be clear. But yeah, that's for a whole different video, and if you're interested in pest management for Hoyas, definitely let me know in the comments below. Last but not least is my Hoya Linearis that always looks crazy with these growth up here. This guy I feel like is a really unique Hoya. It's not like your typical Hoyas with like hard waxy leaves. This one's actually thin, soft, and fuzzy. If you guys are into fuzzy plants, I have a video covering all the fuzzy plants that I have in my collection. I'll link it in the cards above and in the description box below if you're interested. It's definitely grown so much since I showed this plant in that video. It's actually a really fast grower if you get the conditions right, and I just really love the way that it looks as a curtain. Similar to the Hoya Polyneura, I have taken so many cuttings of this plant. In fact, when I first got it, it literally only had about 3 strands, and I've chopped and propped it so many times. It's really simple to do. I just cut it at a node and shove it back into the soil, and it's really thickened up. And again, to keep this video short, I'm not going to go into exactly how I chop and prop this plant. I can do a whole separate video for you, so if that's something that you're interested in, let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see what other Hoyas I have in my collection or what other plants I have in my collection, feel free to check these videos out. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay mellow, my fellows.